What they resent is the aesthetic, which they condemn as a bourgeois mystification. It is not easy, I must say, for me to get over my stunned amazement at this act on their part. After some 20 years of contemplating the spreading of this ghastly phenomenon, it still not only mortifies me, but astonishes me. Such a view would have been laughed out of any academy when I was young, but now is so prevalent that those who oppose it are laughed at.
There will always be, one hopes, incessant readers who go on reading despite the proliferation of fresh technologies for distraction. Sometimes I try to visualize Dr. Johnson or George Eliot confronting MTV Rap or experiencing virtual reality, and find myself heartened by what I believe would be their ironical, strong refusal of such irrational entertainments. After a lifetime spent in teaching literature at one of our major universities, I have very little confidence that literary education will survive its current malaise. I began my teaching career nearly 40 years ago in an academic context dominated by the ideas of T.S. Eliot, ideas that roused me to fury and against which I fought as vigorously as I could. Finding myself now surrounded by professors of hip-hop, by clones of Gallic Germanic theory, by ideologues of gender and of various sexual persuasions, by multiculturalists unlimited, I realize that the balkanization of literary studies is irreversible. All of these resenters of the aesthetic value of literature are not going to go away, and they will raise up institutional resenters after them. As an aged institutional romantic, I still decline the Elegiac nostalgia for theocratic ideology, but I see no reason for arguing with anyone about literary preferences. I do not direct my criticism towards academics, mostly, because only a small remnant of them still read for the love of reading. What Johnson, and Virginia Woolf after him, called the common reader, still exists, and possibly goes on welcoming suggestions of what might be read. Such a reader does not read for easy pleasure, or to expiate social guilt, but to enlarge a solitary existence. So fantastic has the Academy become that I have heard this kind of reader denounced by an eminent critic who told me that reading without a constructive social purpose was unethical and urged me to re-educate myself through an immersion in the writing of Abdul John Mohammed, a leader of the Birmingham, England, School of Cultural Materialism. As an addict who will read anything, I obeyed, but I am not saved, and return to tell you neither what to read or how to read it, only what I have read and think worthy of rereading, which may be the only pragmatic test for the canonical. I suppose that once you have cultural criticism and cultural materialism, you must also entertain the notion of cultural capital. But what is the surplus value that has been exploited in order to accumulate cultural capital? Marxism, famously a cry of pain rather than a science, has had its poets, but so has every other major religious heresy. Cultural capital is either a metaphor or an uninteresting literalism. If the latter, it simply relates to the current marketplace of publishers, agents, and book clubs. As a figure of speech, it remains a cry partly of pain, partly of the guilt of belonging to the intellectuals spawned by the French upper middle class, or of the guilt of those in our own academies who identify with such French theorists and pragmatically have forgotten in what country they actually live and teach. Has there ever been, any cultural capital in the United States of America? We dominate the age of chaos because we have always been chaotic, even in the democratic age. Is Leaves of Grass cultural capital? Is Moby Dick? There has never been an official American literary canon, and there will never be, for the aesthetic in America always exists as a lonely, idiosyncratic, isolated stance. American classicism is an oxymoron, whereas French classicism is a coherent tradition. I do not believe that literary studies as such have a future, but this does not mean that literary criticism will die. As a branch of literature, criticism will survive, but probably not in our teaching institutions. The study of Western literature will also continue, but on the much more modest scale of our current classics departments. What are now called departments of English will be renamed departments of cultural studies, where Batman comics, Mormon theme parks, television, movies, and rock will replace Chaucer, Shakespeare, Milton, Wordsworth, and Wallace Stevens. Major, once elitist universities and colleges will still offer a few courses in Shakespeare, Milton, and their peers, but these will be taught by departments of 3 or 4 scholars, equivalent to teachers of ancient Greek and Latin. This development hardly need be deplored. Only a few handfuls of students now enter Yale with an authentic passion for reading anyway. You cannot teach someone to love great poetry if they come to you without such love. How can you teach solitude? Real reading is a lonely activity and does not teach anyone to become a better citizen. Perhaps the ages of reading, aristocratic, democratic, chaotic, now reach terminus, and the reborn theocratic era will be almost wholly an oral and visual culture. In the United States, a crisis in literary study has the same peculiarity as a religious revival or Great Awakening and a crime wave. They are all journalistic events. Our country has been in a perpetual religious revival for 2 centuries now. Its addiction to civil and domestic violence is even more venerable and incessant. And in the nearly half-century since first I immersed myself in literary study, such activity has been questioned endlessly by society, and generally held to be irrelevant. English and related departments have always been unable to define themselves, and unwise enough to swallow up everything that seems available for ingestion. There is a dreadful justice in such voraciousness having proved to be self-destructive. The teaching of poems, plays, stories, and novels is now supplanted by cheerleading for various social and political crusades, or else the artifacts of popular culture replace the difficult artifices of great writers as the material for instruction. It is not literature that needs to be redefined. If you can't recognize literature when you read it, then no one can ever help you to know it or love it better. A culture of universal access is offered by post-Marxist idealists as the solution to, quote, crisis, end quote. But how can Paradise Lost or Faust Part 2 ever lend themselves to universal access? The strongest poetry is cognitively and imaginatively too difficult to be read deeply by more than a relative few of any social class, gender, race, or ethnic origin. When I was a boy, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar almost universally part of the school curriculum, was an eminently sensible introduction to Shakespearean tragedy. Teachers now tell me of many schools where the play can no longer be read through, since students find it beyond their attention spans. In 2 places reported to me, the making of cardboard shields and swords has replaced the reading and discussion of the play. No socializing of the means of production and consumption of literature can overcome such debasement of early education. The morality of scholarship, as currently practiced, is to encourage everyone to replace difficult pleasures by pleasures universally acceptable, precisely because they are easier. Trotsky urged his fellow Marxists to read Dante, but he would find no welcome in our current universities. I, Harold Bloom, am your true Marxist critic, following Groucho rather than Karl, and take as my motto Groucho's grand admonition, whatever it is, I'm against it. I have been against, in turn, the neo-Christian new criticism of T.S. Eliot and his academic followers, the deconstruction of Paul Dumas and his clones, the current rampages of New Left and Old Right on the supposed inequities, and even more dubious moralities of the literary canon. The very rare, strong critics do not extend or modify or revise the canon, though they certainly attempt to do so. But, knowingly or not, they only ratify the true work of canonization, which is carried on by the perpetual agon between past and present. There is no socio-economic process that has added John Ashbery and James Merrill, or Thomas Pynchon, to the vague, non-existent, and yet still compelling notion of an American canon that yet may be. The poetry of Wallace Stevens and of Elizabeth Bishop has chosen its inheritors in Ashbery and Merrill, even as the poetry of Emily Dickinson selected Stevens and Bishop. Pynchon's best work can be said to marry S.J. Perelman and Nathaniel West, but the canonical potential of The Crying of Lot 49 depends more on our uncanny sense that it is being imitated by Miss Lonely Hearts. Shakespeare and Dante are invariably the exceptions to the descents of canonicity. We never come to believe that they have read too deeply in Joyce and in Beckett, or in anyone else. That is another way of repeating what I have been moved to say time and time again. The Western canon is Shakespeare and Dante. Beyond them, it is what they absorbed and what absorbs them. Redefining literature is a vain pursuit because you cannot usurp sufficient cognitive strength to encompass Shakespeare and Dante, and they are literature. As for redefining them, good fortune to you. That enterprise is now considerably advanced by the new historicism, which is French Shakespeare, with Hamlet under the shadow of Foucault. We have enjoyed French Freud and Lacan, and French Joyce or Derrida. Jewish Freud and Irish Joyce are more to my taste, as is English Shakespeare or Universal Shakespeare. French Shakespeare is so delicious an absurdity that one feels an ingrate for not appreciating so comic an invention.
Like, subscribe, notification bell, join the herd.